Hello, lovelies. I've got another game to review, but first some context, I suppose. This is going to be a bit of a weird one. We're going to ramble around and talk about some other things. But what we have here is Across a Thousand Dead Worlds by Alex T. Friend of the channel, purveyor of high quality games, mostly with that kind of dark, heavy metal-esque aesthetic, by which I don't mean the comics, I mean like the album covers and so on. So I feel like I haven't been giving solo gaming its due necessarily. I don't get it. Right? I don't understand really the appeal, no matter how many times people say it to me. But I haven't really given it a go. So I figured I would go and I would look for a game with a fully fledged single player option, so that I could just try and figure out what it is that people like so much about it. Because to me, you know, I'm also a writer. If I want to do a solo story where I'm in charge of everything, I will just write a story. So I have trouble with it, but I have tried so hard, so manfully to try and understand the appeal of other things that I don't necessarily get, like Powered by the Apocalypse, that it seemed unfair not to give a solo game a fair shake. So I looked around, shopped around, and decided that the best option for me, and a way to support another independent game maker, would be to look at Alex T's Across a Thousand Dead Worlds. So that's why I bought this. Now, it's not really a solo game. When you get down to it, it is a fully fledged game. So I got more than I was necessarily bargaining for, which was nice. If you want to get a copy yourself, blackoathgames.com is the place to go. There are PDFs as well. It's a fairly pricey game for what you get, to an extent. It's about 450 pages, roughly A5 format. Very nice hardback book with a ribbon. We like ribbons. But you may want to get the PDF over the print version for reasons that will become clearer later on as we go through this. So, yeah, Alex is a friend of the channel, friend of T-Shirted Historian's channel as well. He makes high quality stuff with that kind of black metal aesthetic for the most part. This is a science fiction game as opposed to a fantasy game, so a little bit different. And Across a Thousand Dead Worlds places you as what's called a deep diver. So you are an explorer who basically straps yourself into a spaceship, having no idea where it's going to go, what you're going to find at the other end, and away you go to explore. This doesn't seem like a particularly appealing prospect in most realities. You know, strapping yourself into a barely understood piece of alien technology, flying God knows where, having every chance of being annihilated and destroyed at the end of the journey, having to survive, find stuff, and then get back. All seems like something that is not particularly going to happen with any reliability. But the world that you are escaping from, with the chance for wealth and riches and fame, excitement, adventure, and really wild things, is a hellhole. So the world, the Earth that you're leaving behind, is one that has succumbed to environmental collapse and overpopulation. So some of the backgrounds that your character can have in this might include things like scraping the oceans for old plastics so they can be recycled, or mining in layers of trash left by previous human civilization in order to try and get the materials that people need. Yeah, so it's a pretty bleak, horrible, almost biologically sterile world that you're leaving for the prospect of finding somewhere better amongst the stars, something that most people don't have the opportunity to do, and only a very small number of people are ever going to be able to colonize as well. The solar system has been colonized to an extent, but that's also pretty barren as a default, so it's not necessarily the best, friendliest, most exciting place to be otherwise. But this one asteroid was found, packed with weird alien technology, including a bunch of spaceships. Spaceships with enough room for 1 passenger, 3 passengers, or 5 passengers, all of which had preset destinations. So, you can pack the place with supplies, survival gear, hit the go button, and the ship will take you to a pre-programmed potential destination out of a roster of destinations, which you can then explore, maybe find some alien technology, bring it back, become rich, wealthy beyond the dreams of avarice, and so on. Now, some of you are going to find some of this familiar. I certainly found it very familiar. I'd say inspired more than plagiarism, but there are some very familiar things. So, there is a series of science fiction novels starting being written in the 1970s, ending being written in the 1990s by Fred Pohl, called the Heechee Saga, or the Gateway series, depending who you ask. This began with Merchants of Venus in 1972 and was followed by Gateway, Beyond the Blue Event Horizon, Heechee Rendezvous, The Annals of the Heechee, and The Boy Who Would Live Forever. There were a couple of 90s computer games by Legendary, I think. The series of books was optioned for a TV series in 2019, and it follows the fortunes of Robinette Stetley Broadhead, for the most part, who wins the lottery and as a result is able to go and visit the Gateway asteroid, which is an asteroid packed with alien ships in a 1, 3, and 5 configuration with preset destinations, and prospectors, as they're called in that, get into these ships with their supplies, fly off to a random unknown location, investigate, maybe find some more alien artifacts from this alien species called the Heechee, and then return to fame, fortune, excitement, adventure, really wild things. It all sounds a bit familiar, doesn't it? It is the same, but this is darker, and that is a fantastic series of books. So if you're gonna rip off something, rip off the best, I would say. But yeah, for some of us, that's really very familiar. But it's a great premise, particularly for an RPG, because it's mission-based, which is a Games Master godsend. There's a reason why characters travel to escape the horrors of human society at the time. There's a reason they might end up in some weird ancient alien dungeon, death trap, or hex crawl, and have to do stuff and seek their fortune and all that. So motivation, reasons to be in an enclosed adventuring environment, everything else, that's all kind of taken care of for you, while you might have some more freewheeling role-playing back at the asteroid and the space station that has been constructed around it. So that's great. So it's a good premise to be inspired by. Let's put it that way. I would quite like to see a TV series based on the Heechee Saga, but given it's been in development hell since 2019, maybe I should give up hope. And things are far more varied in this game. Like, you might find alien creatures that have overrun an old alien facility. You might find it protected by guardians constructed by that alien species. You might find natural hazards, radiation, black holes, all of that kind of stuff. So there's a bit more variety, a bit more excitement, a bit more of an RPG mindset going into this. System-wise, you have a 20-sided dice, like so. You roll that. Alright, so 7 plus either your skill or your stat modifiers. Let's say plus 5. So that gives us 12. And you're aiming to get over 20. So, fail. You do get modifiers. Things can be easier or more difficult depending on the modifiers on top of your roll. And the further you get over 20, the greater the degree of success that you can do. In combat, you have a stat called Stamina, which you spend in order to make your actions during that turn. It's a little bit more complicated than that, in that you can only move once, perhaps. But otherwise, it's not dissimilar to the stamina system in my own game, Blood, which limits what you can do in a turn. And bigger, heavier weapons might take more effort to use. Things like that. So there's a few additional complications, but otherwise it's fairly simple. Combat is also fairly deadly. A starting character typically has 10 stamina. Most attacks do a base of a d10. There might be bonuses, either flat bonuses or additional dice. So with 10 stamina, that's dead. Or at least critically injured from a single shot. To give you some sort of gauge on things, the free starting pistol weapon does 2d10. The starting armor reduces damage by 3. So on an average hit, getting shot twice pretty much takes you out of things. So, you're fucked. So when it comes to playing the game, take it cagey, take it easy. Be careful, be stealthy, avoid conflict if you can, and that first big score, I would invest in armor. The game does include safety tools, so Alex, I am disappointed. My safety tools, really, my good dude, in what is a space horror game where you're kind of aiming for an alien or aliens sort of atmosphere, doesn't really feel appropriate to me. What else is there to say about this game book? Well, as you can see, it's very dark, which is sometimes easier on some people's eyes, like mine, but it's sometimes harder on other people's eyes. So that's something to take into account. It is full of tables, oracles, random inspiration, with enough variety and options that your various encounters with different alien territories and so on should turn out to be significantly different from game to game. But all of these reference tables and everything do leave me with something of a concern. Now, this is a very nicely produced book, very nicely bound, hardback. It's got some livability, some survivability to the book to be used as a reference tome. But even so, with all of these tables and all the referencing that you're going to need to do, and given the size, it all feels a little bit expensive, to the point, especially with European shipping, my god, it all feels like I wouldn't really want to be constantly leafing back and forth through this book in order to use all of the tables and to reference everything, because the wear and tear on what is a very nice, very, very expensive book is going to be difficult for me to justify. because the sheer amount of referencing that you're going to need to do is likely to even wear out such a nicely bound book in relatively short order. And the glossy page, I have oily skin, right? It can't be helped. This is why people constantly complain about my fingernails when I do these leaf throughs, but I can't really do anything about it. But also the glossy pages, I tend to leave fingerprints on, even when my hands are completely clean, which they are today, but you can already maybe pick up on some of this. So that's the other concern. Finger oils marring the pages and so on. So that's something else to be concerned by. So this may be a game where you actually want to pick up the PDF rather than the hard copy necessarily, or perhaps both, of course. Because the PDF, you're not going to damage it by referencing through it, leafing through it, and so on. The book is a nice object to read and to delve into, but you might want to avoid doing that as much as possible. It's got a pretty basic layout, which is just kind of ponced up with use of colours and little bells and whistles. It's designed to be referenced relatively easily, so page numbers, chapter heading, topic is all there. But it is, underneath all that, it is still a fairly basic book. Nothing wrong with that, especially if you want to be able to use it effectively to reference. Art is a bit scant and a bit mixed, sometimes simple to the point where detail gets lost, as in these weapons. Sometimes it's a sort of a zoomed in landscape. There's not a lot of art with figures or people in it, so that's kind of fitting for if you're playing it as a single player game, because you're getting, a large part, of course I hit an exception when I'm saying that, to a large part you're getting the kind of person's point of view, I guess, and a lonely, empty space landscape, which helps the feeling of the book overall. So while it's simple and there isn't a huge amount of art, there is some, and it's fitting. The whole book is a mood, a big mood. Now, in addition to the book itself, you do get a few things. So you get some little maps. So by default, combat occurs semi-abstracted on little hex maps. So you get a few of those with the book, suggestive of different terrains, and you get simple little markers which are kind of like blips, which evokes alien or aliens to an extent. And obviously the largest number of people you might have in your crew is 5, so you only need 5 tokens for you, more tokens for the bad guys. Yeah, it's okay. The only problem with this is that there's nothing to keep these in. You can tuck them into the book, but they're gonna affect the spine eventually, and they are gonna stick out a bit and get a bit foxed around the edges. So I don't know, an envelope or something, a stiff card envelope to keep these in would have been a nice addition. These are going to get lost or filed away somewhere and forgotten about, unfortunately. You don't need them. You can play combat more abstracted if you want, but it's a little bit of an oversight. Of course, you want to avoid box sets due to additional tax that those incur. And there you go. So what I'm thinking I might do then, to give single player games more of a fair shake, is I might play one out using 1,000 Dead Worlds and then turn it into a sort of quasi-radio play and put it on the channel, either this one or Grim Streams, to give it a fair shake like I have with other ones. Plus it's a way of, creating some additional content. Of the single player games that I've looked at, where it's usually kind of an addendum or afterthought to the main game, this isn't just a single player game. This is a fully fledged RPG, but with enough emphasis and so on single player that this seems like a good bet for something to examine and to use. So we'll see how that goes. Thanks for watching. Hope this was enlightening. Me and my comedically oversized D20. We'll see you later. Zang. A lapidary of wondrous stones and a bestiary of sundry creatures are two OSR resources by Neil Coates, providing you with the alchemical and magical supposed properties of stones, and a bestiary of all the strange creatures in their original interpretations in medieval lore. Available at lulu.com, drive-thru-RPG, and post-mort.com.
Now, Bob, consider this next question very carefully. What is your one purpose in life?
To explode, of course.